Are you tired of engaging in endless power struggles and emotional turmoil with a toxic person, with a narcissist? Maybe you've heard the concept of gray rocking and you're wondering, how can I actually use this to protect myself from interacting with other narcissistic people? Like, what does it actually look like? Maybe you're curious about practical steps you can take to implement gray rocking to begin taking control over you, of your emotional well-being. Part of what we're going to talk about today is the concept of gray rocking, understanding it, being able to apply it, and then also why there's a caveat to of why I don't have a ton of videos on this, because I believe it only works 50% of the time. But this might be exactly what you need in your relationship at this current time, maybe to get you through a period of time, maybe to get you to an end result. Maybe you're working on an exit strategy, whatever it might be. The whole goal with this is try to help you understand it. That's really why I'm on the platform. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations, the creator of the Narc app, and your guide in the 45-day Clarity Challenge that you can access at claritychallenge.net. One of the things that we want to talk about is how to actually deal with a narcissist. A narcissist is trying to get a reaction, trying to get a response from you every single time. So in comes this concept of gray rocking and how it's actually implemented. So we're going to talk through a little bit of just understanding gray rocking and how it can actually be a powerful tool for dealing with the toxic person, what it looks like, why it's effective, and also try to give you some tips of how to implement it, and have a caution at the very end about why it might be only 50% effective. So one of the things we need to dive into is, what is gray rocking? What does this actually look like, and what does it actually sound like? Gray rocking is this concept of being intentionally uninteresting and emotionally unavailable to the narcissist. It's being neutral. It's having a neutral response, a neutral tone, a neutral reaction to the things that are happening. You see, a narcissist wants to get a reaction out of you. Like, I would poke and prod and push people till I would get a reaction, till I would get something that I want out of them. And I keep doing it over and over and over again, and then I'd get that from them, either positive or negative. I get that from them, and then be like, oh, sense of superiority. Like, I just did this. I just caused this. This is the whole concept of narcissistic supply. Positive or negative, it doesn't really matter. It's just a narcissist trying to get a response or reaction out of you consistently. So what happens when you stop giving a response? Well, that would be the concept of gray rocking. Basically, as there's interactions happening with the narcissist, you're maintaining complete neutrality. Like, very, very neutral in the conversation. Like, it's you're becoming as uninterested as a gray rock. A rock that is just sitting on the road, and you're like, just a rock. Not that big of a deal. The whole goal is to get to the place where you're actually starving the narcissist of the attention, of the drama, of the emotional reactions that they're looking for. Because that is what they're looking for. So many times people think, well, I'm just going to call them out. I'm going to tell them what's what. I'm going to show them like that I actually know that it's them, that's an abusive, all this kind of stuff. And it never really does anything. The reason why it doesn't do anything typically is because of the sense that a narcissist is looking for this reaction, looking for this response. Even if it's a negative response, you calling them out on something, it's still a response. It's still a reaction. So when we use gray rocking, the whole concept is being so uninterested that it starves them of that attention. Now, this is going to be really frustrating for a lot of narcissists, and like really, really piss them off. Because of the fact that like when you start to starve them from attention, they're going to ramp it up. Maybe they ramp up the abuse. Maybe they ramp up love bombing. Maybe they ramp up other different aspects, gaslighting, future faking, whatever it might be. They're going to start ramping something up. Why? Because you're starting to take away their supply. This is why a narcissist doesn't want you to hang out with other people, friends or family, because they might tell you something that'll pull you away from the narcissist. Like, the narcissist is very much in tune with trying to get people pulled away from them time and time and time again. Okay, so you need to understand that when a narcissist feels that pull, they're going to try to get you back. Same thing with gray rocking. When they feel that you're kind of pulling away emotionally, they're like, oh, got to get you back, and then it goes back to the same exact cycle. So with the concept of gray rocking, you're getting to the place where you're being emotionally neutral, uninteresting. Like the narcissist is not getting something from you. Okay, but what you do is you end up taking the lack of emotional engagement and you reduce the narcissist's ability to manipulate and control your emotions. Okay, some of the best examples I have of this are actually when I've been doing a live at times with Catherine Kleiss with Stand Coaching. One of the things is like she would demonstrate it on there, and I think she demonstrates it like really well. Okay. But being so uninterested and being so uninterested in the responses that even as she was giving an example over a live event, like I was getting pissed. I was like, that's really frustrating. It's the same thing that happens with a narcissist of what they experience of like when you actually shut off that emotional side, you shut off and you're neutral in a lot of different aspects. It's like that pisses me off because I want a reaction. I'm used to the drama. I'm used to the things that make me feel or make me act a certain way. Okay. So think of it this way. Instead of you got a narcissist that's very, very like poking your buttons, like pushing you, like prodding you to react, prodding you to go crazy, like in the moment, like they're really, really pushing you. Instead of reacting, think about responding with neutral statements, disinterested body language, depriving them of the emotional validation they seek in that interaction. This could be as simple as being like, okay, sure. I'll think about that. Yeah. Really like very, very short, small responses. You can see as this continues and as this progresses, it's going to get really frustrating for narcissists because you're taking away that reaction piece. You're taking away that piece that they actually want. Now, how does this actually work? Like implementing gray rocking requires that you have to establish and have clear emotional boundaries. This is a hard one for a lot of people. Boundaries in general is a hard one for people, but emotional boundaries. Like emotional boundaries need to be where you're very, very consistent. Okay, emotionally on saying like, hey, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, I'm only going to respond to this level. I'm going to respond emotionally to this level. When you maintain consistency, that's when you start to train the toxic person not to do the things that they're doing. When you start to hold them accountable by like, okay, that's a boundary and you have consequences for that boundary, you have consequences for the things that you've done, that also helps as well. Okay, but you have to be able to set up these clear boundaries for you. Again, they're not for the other person, they are for you. They're for you to be able to say, okay, this is as far as I'm going to go in this conversation. This is as far as I'm going to go in this emotionally triggering environment. Like this is something I need to be able to pull back and respond in a very neutral way. This is a hard part. You might struggle with it. It's like, do you struggle with this? If you do, like leave a comment, let people know because it is hard to be able to do this. A lot of times it's hard to be able to do this because of the story that you're telling yourself. Because a lot of times the story that you're telling yourself has to do with the trauma bond, the hope, the potential, the cognitive dissonance, thinking maybe he's going to change, maybe he's going to figure out all these different pieces. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to sit back and be like, wait a second, I've seen this person, I've seen them demonstrate stuff on a day-to-day basis, how they don't care, how they don't actually show up for me or the kids. So therefore, I'm pulling back so that I can actually focus on my needs, my care. Okay? So when you see this, you have to start identifying the boundaries, the emotional boundaries you need to be able to gray rock, and you also need to identify the things that are triggering you. Like you're going to have different phrases, different words, different tones that the narcissist is going to use to trigger a response out of you. So then we have to start going in and working on the specific triggers. Why are they doing that? What are they saying to you? What story are you believing when you get triggered in that moment? How do we actually work on taking those back so that they don't have the same detrimental effect on you? So understanding those is absolutely essential. Then getting to the place where you practice self-care. Self-care that you don't need a validation from the other person. You don't need them to give you positive affirmation. You don't need them in any aspect that you're able to be like, I'm okay with me. Regardless of what he does, regardless of what he says, I'm okay with me. And helping to reinforce his boundaries. All right, so think of it this way. Narcissist keeps poking and prodding and pushing you, being like, I'm going to make these hurtful comments, statements, belittling things, and you just calmly state, hey, I don't want to wish, I'm not going to engage. Like, you redirect the topic to like a neutral topic, like to something that is different than what he's actually talking about. Now, at the end of the day, the biggest piece here when we talk about gray rocking is working on them seeing from you that you're completely disinterested, that you don't care about what that person's doing. And it doesn't mean you don't care about that person or you don't care about the situation, but you don't care to give a response to a toxic person who's living in a toxic lifestyle, who's living in an alternate reality that doesn't want to actually face the facts or face the truth of the things they've done. Now, I mentioned I had a warning. For me, what I've seen, how I've coached, how I've talked to different people, I've seen a lot of people that have done gray rocking, okay? Out of those, I would tend to give a rough estimate of 50% of the time gray rocking works. 50% it does not. You need to understand when I was talking about like, hey, when you gray rock, it starts to piss off the narcissist, starts to frustrate them. You're going to have some that they're going to be like, okay, I'm done. I don't really want to deal with you because you're being too hard to get. You're disinterested, so I'm going to just move on. Then you get the others that are actually going to ramp it up, that are going to ramp up the abuse even more, that are going to be more toxic because they're not getting a response. And so they're looking for that no matter what. And so they'll be addicted to this chase, to this push-pull, to like trying to break down your barriers. With that, you need to understand, one, they're not respecting any boundaries. You need to be looking for an exit strategy. Sometimes you might have to do a little bit more cordial, or like sometimes people refer to it even as yellow rocking. It's like the nicer version of gray rocking, like just slightly more. All in all, when you're dealing with a narcissist and you have to be in some type of communication for a period of time, I would highly recommend looking at the BIF method. Brief, informative, friendly, and firm, as a framework of how to be able to phrase conversations, texts, interactions, so that you don't get sucked into an emotionally charged environment, that they're getting the response that they want from you. Maybe you're at the place now where you're like, I'm struggling with this because when he does this, how I react feels toxic. How I react seems like I'm being abusive. I'm not sure what's true or what's not, because he's telling me now that I'm being abusive by how I'm reacting. If you're struggling with that, I want to invite you to join our 7-day challenge at escapetoxicity.com. You can check that out because for $7, you gain access to valuable resources, practical tools, and supportive community that's going through the same process, understanding about narcissism, learning about reactive abuse, learning about what's actually happening underneath the surface. If you want to interact or you want to talk with me sometime, you can go to rawmotivations.com. We'd love to partner with you there. Otherwise, thanks so much. Y'all have a great day. Follow and like and subscribe.